Hi, I'm Tim Burton. This is the commentary for Batman. If I recall correctly, one of the first people to be able to kind of change the logo of a studio. Hadn't been that much of that kind of thing that gone on, so it was kind of a struggle to begin with, but now I notice we're able to do it almost every single time. I always felt in movies, the titles really help set the mood of the film, and this was the first time, since we were doing something different from people's perception of Batman, most people feel, knew the TV series, which was a, complete opposite tone in some ways. So, this was a chance to sort of set the mood and tone that it wasn't a TV series. It was just sort of exploring the dark, recesses of the mind, and then sort of, just being inside something, kind of like being inside somebody's head, and then kind of coming out to reveal what it is. I grew up on the TV show and I loved it, and I mean, it's like, I think that there was a fear with purists of the comic that, like, oh, well, given what I'd done before, that my tendency would be to go and do something like the TV series. But, that was the furthest thing from my mind. In fact, I knew, loving the series, but I also loved, I wasn't a huge comic books fan, but I did love Batman. That was my favorite comic by far, just because the kind of phantom of the opera-like nature of it. And, I'd grown up watching horror films and also understood the psychology of the character, this sort of split personality, the kind of hiding in the shadows, the darker aspects and the light and dark mixed together. So I knew right away that I wanted to be more pure to that kind of what the comic was originally. Sam Hamm, who did the original script, I think he did a really good job of getting right to that kind of back to the old comic and, the darker aspects of it, but also with humor. And that's why the design was important as well. Trying to create a sort of parallel New York as opposed to shooting in New York or shooting, or making it, film like Blade Runner, which did such amazing sort of futuristic city. So we just decided to not make it, futuristic, but just sort of, designed, but more parallel to, like, say, New York. One of the things that we said is, like, if the planning commission in New York was all screwed up, which, in fact, at times it is, but also with a character like Batman, it was fun to, set it in his world as opposed to, again, taking him and putting him in New York. I mean, that it was an opportunity to sort of put him into his own world, which should still be recognizable enough so that you could say New York or whatever. We didn't use too many real futuristic in the sense, I mean, it's more alternative, but did go with that, try to go for that sort of slightly timeless, where you're kind of mixing up cameras and sort of making it sort of has a flight period feel to it, but sort of more generic as well. I mean, and that's why I just try not to use any, product placement or anything that sort of says, oh, it's today. I mean, you want to give it as much of a recognizable thing, but not make it call it too much attention to itself. So that's why we mixed up the just all the props and the sets and the look of it. For me, the world that the characters inhabit is important because it's, from the first movie I did, Pee-wee, it's like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. It's like it was important to put that character in a world that it fits. Otherwise, it just seems strange. So always was important for me, especially on this one, to give it its own feel. It was really important for us to get into the psychology of at least what I thought was the psychology of the Batman character. And people's only image of it, except from the was the TV show where it was like, kids' Halloween cape, that you go trick or treating in. So we tried to give him the psychological profile that he wanted, which was that it's a scary figure. It's a phantom-esque, you don't know, is it a human? Is it not human? And keeping that sort of mystery that you feel like the character wanted to create for himself. And I've met a lot of different actors, very sort of what you would consider your traditional, square-jawed, superhero-looking type guys. And after a while, it just sort of dawned, I realized, there's a reason why the guy dresses up like a bat. It's because he's trying to create a menacing sort of persona for himself. And that's why I thought Michael was perfect for the role, because he's like somebody who needs to dress up like a bat. He's got this crazy look in his eye, but he's not what you would consider your sort of classic looking superhero actor. So having him do it, it all made sense. He's got to create this look, this sort of costume, this thing to kind of make himself scarier.
Kill me! Kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
The first line after he appears and he says, "I'm Batman." I mean, that was again the point where we wanted to say to the audience, this isn't the TV show, and give him that sort of quiet strength of what, kind of really sort of sets what that character is and what he's tending to be right in that one line. So it was important to do that right away. And Michael, it was interesting because it was like finding what that voice was. It's like, we knew it wasn't I'm Batman, it wasn't a high pitched kind of a thing. We didn't get that far into the bat, high pitched squeal thing. But just that sort of quiet, simple, internal, slightly psychotic strength to it. The casting of Jack as a Joker I don't even think there necessarily was a conversation because it was so perfect. I mean, it was just like, because, he is the Joker. There's nobody, it's like everybody's first choice. Even people not making the movie, so that was about as clear as it ever got. And in fact, there's probably more of a worry that he was almost too perfect for it. But, he's so incredible that, you expect Jack to be the Joker, and yet he even goes, for me, he goes beyond that. He's so amazing that way. He was a real sort of godfather of this movie for me, in the sense of that he was really supportive of me. He was really, and once he was in, it just gave the project an energy that just hard to describe. And, was, like I said, is the Joker. And the thing about him is that he gets the psychology of it all. He's not doing it just because it's he really gets it. And even though, in some cases it's almost too perfect, but he even still goes beyond that for me. He just is the Joker. And it's funny it's probably the first time I'd ever met an actor like that has the persona and mystique that he does. But you see what somebody like that does for the crew and, for me and for everybody, in the sense of the energy level, and you just see people's pace get picked up a bit, it's an amazing thing to watch. Sometimes I just want to do take. I didn't overdo this, but it was just so fascinating to watch because you do maybe, I don't know what our average, maybe 5-6 takes, didn't go too much, some technical pops, but every take he give you just something slightly different. And I mean, the great thing about Jack, he can do anything and make it real. I think it's like, there's times when he's making these just strange noises for no apparent reason. And it's like, I get it, and, I was, and I was a type of person too that was not the greatest communicator. I sort of ramble or speak in tongues or every third word, and he'd look at me and go, he was nice enough to pretend like he knew what I was talking. We shot this at Pinewood, which is a great old studio, one of the biggest, in I have a real soft spot for it because, it had a huge backlot area where we were able to build the city, which was amazing because there's, not many studios anywhere that have a backlot anymore. So, sets I always feel, and this was obviously the era before CG, and also we were lucky enough to build sets, which I always find helps everybody, the actors, because you can feel it. I mean, you're out there freezing cold, and look, they look like they're out there in the freezing cold, and that was important because, again, when you're dealing with fantasy things, it helps crew, actors, me, grounded in reality. You can feel the grime, you can feel the steam, and it just helps make it a bit more believable. Anton, first, the designer, it was something we talked about as making things really big scale. And since we could only build up, say, to a certain level, we wouldn't try to shortchange the scale of it. If we had to do a mapping to add on to it, we would do it, but we wouldn't shortchange. If we had a pedestal or something, we just wanted to make sure that it would almost even overscaled. This was the first time I'd experienced the Hollywood trend of making a big movie and you have a script that we all seem to like, and then all of a sudden it unravels and and to be honest, I do not understand this dynamic, but it happens. It's happened more than once. It's something that I don't want to happen again. Things change. I mean, a lot of it's based on budget. A lot of it's based on time. A lot of it's based on, I don't think we did anything, shortchanged. We didn't add, I don't remember adding a lot more for Jack. I mean, we embellished it a little bit, but, and I don't remember adding stuff for him and taking stuff out from other people necessarily. I mean, the script may have changed for certain reasons. We had a situation where he had cast somebody else and, she had an accident, couldn't do the film. So that was fairly late in the game. So Kim came into it and, I didn't know, it was like, in fact, we might have almost been starting to shoot. I can't remember, but it's like, oh my God. But I felt so grateful because she was so good. And I didn't know her and I was nervous. I go, who? Yeah. But, she gave it a grounding and a kind of a reality and a simplicity, which I found to be really good. You got all these guys running around acting crazy and stuff. And she kind of was up to it that way. I don't know. I found her performance to be really good and really, I enjoyed working with her, and she was, and she's funny. She's, I think I detected a craziness in a good way about her, that I didn't really get a chance to get to know too much. But as I felt, she brought a real grounding to the proceedings, and so it was a good, surprise. in the editing room, we may have taken a few, always you're taking a few things out and somebody's going to get shortchanged a little bit. But I try to edit as I go because the fact is, these schedules are so short. There's nothing worse than shooting, having to cut out a half hour, like the next week you stop shooting. It's just like, it's painful and really painful. So try to watch it as I go along, just so that, you're not doing that. And things were always changing. I mean, again, once a script starts to unravel and then you start shooting, and all these new things come up. I mean, it's and we were shooting 6 days a week too, which I wouldn't recommend. Here in London where everybody's pretty much local. I mean, it's one thing if you're on location, but if you are, here and everybody's local, shooting 6 days was somewhat almost counterproductive to the film.
Carl, we get somebody else to do this.
I think it was the first day of shooting. It's probably been the only time I've ever been terrified of anybody. And I was nervous. I'd never really done a big film before. And it was a shot of Jack Palance coming out of the bathroom. And so, set up the shot and I going, I think my voice was changing. I was just going through puberty then. So I kind of like action, and, nothing. Jack didn't come out of the bathroom and I go, well, okay, so cut. Okay. So come out of the bathroom. And I don't know, I probably wasn't a good people person at that time or whatever, but he started to get angry with me. And he started going, I've made over 100 films. How many have you made? And he started to get, and I literally left my body. I had a whiteout experience that I will never forget. In fact, the hairs on my neck, when I start to think about that story, I still start to get freaked out. But he was good for the part, he really did, is a unique man, he really is. He is, that is exactly what we said, is that, can't think of anybody else who could be Jack Nicholson's boss. The interesting thing about the Batman character and what we wanted to do with it is, he's a character that wants to remain hidden. So in some ways it felt like I had to respect that. And it's like, so, when people go, oh, well, Jack is so good, Michael's so, low key. It's like, well, that's part of what it's all about. As a guy who wants to, always duck out of the room, kind of blend in a certain way, not be, so it's we tried to respect that in what and how we presented the character and when we presented him, and not make him just completely in your face all the time. Again, we kind of learn things as we go along. So in setting up the characters, just gave them little things to do that says, this guy knows this guy. He knows what he's going to do, even though he doesn't know what he's going to do. And, so that you see that they have a relationship and you see the sort of, the mind of Bruce Wayne, which is both very focused and unfocused. And again, trying to show you that right away. My opinion, psychological profile of Batman and Bruce Wayne is that they're split. They're double. They've got two sides. And oftentimes if you see either people that are smart or creative or whatever, they're very focused on one hand, and on the other hand, they have huge gaps, either absent-mindedness or unfocused. And usually the more focused they are in one area, the less focused something suffers. And, that's in this case, the character has it in extremes. Casting Michael it felt really, really right because, again, you look at Michael and you see an intelligence and an intensity and kind of craziness in his eyes, which is, it's all about the eyes, especially with a guy in a mask. And again, you look at him and you go, well, he's not your standard superhero looking kind of a guy. And again, that's why he needs to dress up like a bat. That was a real good, that felt right and real. And Michael, understood that. So he, very intelligent, acted that way, just went for that and tried to keep it honest and real and keep that psychological profile. I felt that both Batman and Bruce Wayne, you couldn't think of one without the other because, like I said, the eyes were important, and Michael's eyes, that's what comes through the costume, and you want to sense. There's an aliveness in his eye and a craziness. I mean, that's the guy, you're not a normal person and dress up like a bat, unless it's Halloween. So it's, that was doubly important. And for the actor, I think Michael, would probably say that the Bruce, they're the same. So you couldn't think of one without the other. And it needed to feed off of each of those to become one thing. One of the other things I liked about the Batman character is that he was a real guy, so it's, I felt it was probably one of the more psychologically based comics than a lot of the others. I mean, even the villains, I got their psychology. I liked them because I could understand the duality, and I thought the Batman comics were the ones that really, you get that in other comics, but for me, that really got right into it because it's like he's a real guy. I mean, we have him do kind of larger than life things, but I always tried to keep it still semi-real to where, it's not overly magical that way. And even though it's sort of heightened reality, keeping it semi-real.
Oh, the right, Batman.
This is Robert Wall. Alexander Knox's character was, I don't believe he was in the comics, but it was in Sam Hamm's original script. It was a new character, but it seemed to fit. And Robert seemed very good because he had that sort of kind of, again, almost kind of timeless, almost period kind of reporter feel, like a movie back in the 40s or 50s kind of thing, but still had a contemporary feel to him. And it has a lot of humor to him as well.
Oh, and, give Knox a grand.
I love Michael Gough. I mean, I was a huge fan of like the horror Hammer movies, and he's been in a lot of great movies that like Conga, where he plays a lecherous college professor who grows man-eating plants and creates a 50-foot guy in a gorilla suit. I mean, it was just such a great pleasure to me. and I, I'd grown up loving him. And then he's just such a great guy. I mean, it's always amazing when you meet people that you admire and then, from their film, and then you meet them in person and they're just wonderful people. And, he's a great illustrator. He's just a sweet man. I love him. He's great. The Batcave, again, is another, important place. And, in the original comics, I do believe there was a giant penny and a Tyrannosaurus, which I love. But, again, we just wanted to, this really represents sort of the darker side of his mind, the sort of, expressionism. That's what I was about expressionism. It's like, to me, it represented the inside of somebody's mind. And that's why the Batcave was something that, I think it would have only been just thinking about, well, where did that large penny come from? Or what's with the Tyrannosaurus Rex?
We've been ratted out here, boys. Watch it.
I guess I'm not never known as an action director, but it was fun to kind of do this kind of stuff, and you know, I can't say that being in a used dark, dank, chemical plant was the most fun, but the action was fun, and it was like, I used to play like this as a child, so that's probably about the level of my action expertise. Each time we tried to give it a little bit more of a reveal for Batman, but still, it was important to always keep him in and out that way, just because that's what he wanted, that's what he was trying to achieve, and that's what he achieved. I wasn't that familiar. I remember at the time, I think I saw The Killing Joke, and I liked that one because I think part of the problem for me, why I wasn't really a comic book fan too much when I was a child, is that I never knew which box to. I don't know if I had dyslexia or whatever, but I couldn't. They were too. They were too like I didn't know which box to read first. And the thing I liked about The Killing Joke, it was very visual. It was almost like boards for a film. It had a filmic quality to it, and if I recall correctly, the writing was sort of minimal, and it was just more cinematic to me that way. And so, and I like the seriousness of it and the psychology of it and all. So it probably had, there was some inspiration for me in those things. The thing that I find interesting for me in these, again, to help ground it in reality, is to see the beginnings of a character. And, I mean, with the Joker, we see it first. With Batman, we hint at it. We don't, we do show sort of the roots of why he becomes what he becomes, but still keeping him a mystery a little bit. That was, to me, was important in this one, but it was fun to kind of see the beginnings of, like, say, the Joker.
See if you can get up on the catwalk.
Michael and Jack, I think Jack had a slightly easier. I mean, I thought that the Batman suit probably wasn't the most. I mean, you probably wouldn't wear it in your, on the weekend watching the game. You know what I mean? It wasn't the most pleasant outfit. I think it was quite difficult to deal with. But I think I remember in this case, I think I remember a moment where we were staring at each other, and just started laughing because I mean, here's two grown men, one's dressed as a bat and they're running around shooting fake guns at each other. I mean, it's one of those beautiful moments where you get the absurdity of making a film. The most difficult thing about this scene was just the location. It was just so gross and disgusting. And I mean, I think I was pretty much sick every day working on this movie. Had, flu, cold, I think pretty much for the whole film. since we didn't have, again, CG and stuff like that, which I don't think I would have relied on anyway. The design of the costume, we did the best we could to try to give him a wingspan and, and the ribbing and make him come across how he wants to come, like I said before. Both Bob Ringwood and Anton First, and myself, it was all important that it all feel part of the same thing. So, we were always checking. I think there was always a back and forth checking because it was the Batmobile and the costume, you wanted it to be of a piece, of a whole. And, again, with Bob, it was, getting into that psychological profile. Let's make him look imposing. Let's make him look like he wants to look. Let's keep the mystery. Let's give him a toughness. Let's get away from the leotards. So it was quite heavy too. If I recall correctly, it was a really, really heavy costume. Michael couldn't hear. Which I think actually helped. It ended up giving him that sort of internalized, I don't think Michael could have found the voice until he put that costume on because he couldn't hear, it was like talking to a deaf person, so it was quite a thing to deal with. But, a lot of research went into making the costume. Bob had a whole group of people that were testing different rubbers and different, leathers and latexes and all sorts of things to try to come up with the right, textures and different capes for different things, different heavy, different weights so that they would sometimes just have a much tougher, stronger, sometimes then a little looser so the wind could catch it a bit more. So, a lot of research went into that. The Batman character is a character. The Bruce Wayne character is you cannot get close to anybody. That's something, he's got to remain hidden. And there's something sad about that. So there's a sort of bittersweet. And so when Vicky comes into it, he's attracted and he finds, he's sort of falling for this, which is very scary. Because obviously, it's, he's a guy who dresses up as a bat as well as being Bruce Wayne. So, Michael's good at capturing because he's got that in his personality. He's kind of talk to and then sort of get distracted with something else, and he's very kind of very, very much why I think he was good for the role because he kind of is that way. He's got that in his own personality. There are lots of little surprise little areas at Pinewood, so we had to just sort of find this last minute. And, but the good thing about Pinewood is that it's got a lot of old little secret places that, even coming back there many years later, I found new places that I hadn't seen that whole time working on Batman. The reveals of these characters feel important because it's kind of operatic, in the sense of, and that kind of operatic monster movie tragedy kind of, I always liked that and I grew up watching that kind of thing and like that sort of build up, to characters. And, you know, and Jack was so good at that kind of stuff, and just hearing his laugh and all, and feeling the transformation for their, you know, I remember this one. Doing the Roger Corman things. Absolutely. You get it right away. He's got it in his blood. It's good because they both try to find the reality. That was something important, you know, in a comic book movie, to find some reality. The look of the Joker. I mean, you know, you've got the comic book, you got people's image of it in comics and the TV thing. And then you have Jack. And then you have, so, I mean, the thing I think that Nick, we discussed was, you know, you want to make it the Joker, but retain Jack. I mean, Jack, again, since he is, you don't have to do much. So I think Nick's approach was to just take Jack and try to just do as minimal as possible. I mean, you know, the inspiration was kind of, there was that old movie called The Man Who Laughs, about a guy who had a frozen grin and, on his face. So Nick did do that so that his smile was pretty much constantly there, but again, tried to do it where it was minimal and mainly just having Jack be able to come through it. We sort of kind of reveal him a few times, you know, build it up, but, you know, somebody like Jack, you can do that with somebody like him. And again, it's just part of that sort of comic opera, you know, aspect of it. That's just him. I mean, so it's more, you know, like I said, just doing like 5-6 takes and just seeing the nuances. I mean, I just learned a lot from him that way. And, you know, sometimes he'd do those on takes and sometimes he wouldn't. And, I just found, I ended up using it because I thought they were, you know, they're just, you know, and I think that's, I don't know. I think probably one of the reasons he wanted to do it is that it was a way for him to, he understands, I think, this sort of mask acting, you know, being hidden behind something allows you to just kind of let your subconscious come out and, you know, just let his subconscious come out. And it's great. You know, it's like a weird form of therapy. I think Jack enjoyed the what again called the mask acting. I think he really, from what I could tell, got into that a lot. And so, you know, I mean, you know, it's never pleasant being slapped with makeup on, you know, for 4 hours, you know, but he was great about it. You know, everybody had their problems. Michael had his Batman suit. Jack had his makeup. Kim had her high heel shoes, running around on slick streets. You know, everybody had their problems. I worked with Sam, for a while, a fairly long time. I'd go up to San Francisco, and he was real instrumental in getting, because he got the tone. I mean, he got, this is setting the tone as that this is not the TV series, and he took the serious approach, the approach we wanted it to be, and, had the right, mixture of the darkness and the psychological profile and some of the humor, so then that's where the story gets bizarre, because it's like, I don't recall there was a writer's strike and this or that, and then went to England, and, and there was, there's always this case, and I think it's just the thing that happens on big movies. There's I don't know how to describe it except as the fear factor. It's like, well, there's a script, but we can't, we got to be shooting. We got to fix it. And it's like, well, what's wrong with it? And then, well, we've got to just make it better, or embellish this or do that. And so then what ends up happening is it just starts to unravel. And I don't know how, I try not to let this ever happen again, but it just starts to change. And some of it's based on, like I said, budget and sets and where we can do this and do that. And so things change that way. But I'd worked with Warren. He was good at dealing with, the people and the politics, and while also still writing, I mean, he almost had to be a politician and a writer. And, so he was over here, trying to, fix the leaks in the dam, so to speak. And Warren, I worked with him on Beetlejuice, and, he lived in Austin, Texas, and I loved going to work with her because it was a great city to work and play in. And he was really good, Warren, he always amazed me, because meeting him, you'd never think he was good at dealing with people that he dealt with. But he was he always, it was sort of mind boggling to me, is not only, he was good at what he did with the writing, but he was also just good at dealing with the craziness, the surface of it all. I love Tracy. I'd seen him in, I can't remember what I'd seen him in, but he just had such a unique, and Jack knew him, I think. And so Jack was all for it, I believe, his right hand man. I think the great thing about Jack, or any good actor, he likes to personalize, I think, everything, which is important to me as well. And, cause it just gives you a little extra something. And, I think since they knew each other, it just made it a little extra personal for Jack as well. You look back at the old Batman comics and stuff, it does have elements of like a gangster movie. Obviously, it has noir elements because it was really one of the only comics that took place at night and had the shadows and all of that. So, and he's a real guy. So in some ways, it's closer to that than it is a fantasy or something. We had our rules that we tried to keep to as much as possible with him. DC was very supportive because I think they were excited that a version of was going to be, more like the comics and more like the more recent comic. So I think that they were excited about that, and because they were going through a kind of a regeneration of, a new level of comics. So I think that was, Jeanette Kahn and all of them, I thought was very supportive, all the way through. Bob Kane came a lot, and he was very supportive as well. Again, I think he was really happy. I'm glad you did. We, again, mixed up the times so that it had a sort of period feel. Uh, but then, like I said, we try not to limit ourselves because it didn't want it to be like, oh, this takes place in 1940 or this takes place in 1989. I mean, the timelessness. So, even though the look of it has elements of that, every now and then we try to, there are probably some modern references and things that are contemporary so that there was a connection to contemporary audiences that you could recognize something. So it's a tricky balance to try to create, but, you had New York from the 40s mixed with San Francisco Fisherman's Wharf of the mid 80s. When you're a child, at least back, well, when I was a child, there was always a movie theater that was like amazing, or a few of them that just, again, that's why we set that scene sort of in front of a theater, just because it is like memory, it's like going back and somehow that theater helped represent that. Because, like I said, there were several movie theaters when I was a child that I'll never forget. You can almost just picture them in your mind now. Not like in multiplexes of today. Danny Elfman, I mean, he'd done, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So, I mean, he was the guy, and I knew he could do it because he, like myself, gets the right mixture of dark and light and knows, when to do that. And again, I always treat the music as a character. So treat Danny as like another character in the sense of him help set the tone. I mean, that's the way, with the actors, the sets, the music, especially with something like this where there are lots of preconceived ideas about it, try to nail that right away. I think I always try to mix the things up, some more than others probably, but this one, well, they've all been a challenge that way. I mean, I can't say is one more than the other. I enjoyed doing both the action and the quieter moments. I mean, it was interesting for me. It's probably the first film where tried to be I mean, Pee-wee and Beetlejuice were different kinds of things. This one tried to give it a reality that I'd never actually worked with before. So it was fun and it was challenging for me, and I enjoyed that. But it was made easier by the actors because they were trying to do that and did do it. And between Michael and him, supplying that sort of foundation for those scenes, it was it helped me. I was able to do something that I hadn't really done before.
Can somebody tell me what kind of a world we live in where a man dressed up as a bat?
I really wanted to do Batman, like I said, because it was my favorite comic, and it was a personal thing. I mean, it's like I felt the the split personality, a person who wants to remain hidden. I mean, I grew up and I didn't speak very much, and I just sort of remained very internalized. I was a very internal person. I liked that about the character, and the fact that he couldn't really have a relationship and had trouble having relationships and communicating and just kind of being a normal person, and so all of those things I felt very strongly in myself. So it was really easy for me to kind of tap into the material. That's why I felt so strongly about it. And then on the side, then you have the Joker, which is your sort of, your your anarchist side, and your fantasy of being able to do whatever you want, So both of those elements fed into things that I felt very strongly about and love. So it's hard for me to watch movies after right after I do them for several years, just because it's a enjoyable experience to make a movie, but it's somewhat painful too. So somehow the pain stays, and it's like the further away I get from it, the better it gets, and the more painless it gets.
Hi.
The only one that in my mind that I can remember, obviously, was Superman, which was 10 years earlier, and was a different kind of thing. I mean, that was more with what the Superman character was, which is a much more open and positive and lighter in a certain way thing. So I do feel like we were the first ones to kind of make it the darker comic, which, now it's like, it's okay. Here's another guy running around in a rubber outfit, I mean, it's, but at the time it felt new, and it felt fun and fresh and new. I feel good about this because I do feel like, I know what we went through to try to get it, but and in fact, it wasn't so bad. The studio, they weren't real like, oh, let's make it like the TV show or anything. They were into it. They were into this version of it, and I got, I handed it to them because it was like, because usually they're afraid of things like this, and so. And honestly, I noticed, I was working on it for a long time, but I know that, we didn't quite get the green light until like Beetlejuice came out. And, I mean, I don't know if that hadn't been successful, if somehow they might have gone like, well, maybe you're not the right guy for it, or I don't know. I don't know if that would have happened or not, but, they were supportive of it, and they were into this kind of version, which surprised me. people have asked me, like, well, do you know the history? And I know there was a huge history, but I said, no, I don't, because it's like, it doesn't, once you're on board, it's like you got a huge job ahead of you. And it's like knowing the history was sort of meaningless to me, even though I knew there was one. And that happens a lot. I mean, I've noticed it in the last movie I did, it's got a history to it. So therefore, it takes a while. And I do think it is a timing thing. And it's happened to me on other things where, I've had projects where I wanted to do it, like Nightmare Before Christmas. I could have wanted to do that 10 years earlier, but there was this right group of people, window of opportunity. And then you realize, well, this is for the best. And, Batman was certainly the first thing like that, where those elements came together like that. The planets aligned. Jack, I think was first on board, I believe. And I think that obviously just set, it's like, that set the tone. It did set the tone. Anton, was brilliant and brilliant designer. And again, just the mix of, it's like materials. It's like, again, we based it off of what we'd seen in New York and just went beyond it, where it's a mix of brick, concrete, metal, iron, but just more so. We just took it and he just went more so. And again, with the scale, kept the scale really big. So I think if you go into those big museums in New York or whatever, that was important. That's my handwriting. And so you can see how bad, and now I was trying to do a good job. So back to school for me. I'm not sure how this happened. If it was from the producers or Prince or whatever, said, wanted to do music for the film. That was probably my first introduction into the studio world of other, things. And I can't remember exactly. I think we might have already been in production. And I think it might have even been like I wanted to do the score. I don't know. I can't remember. But, I had Danny, which wanted to do the score. So I remember meeting Prince in the Batcave. That's where I first met him. And then I went to his place in Minneapolis, and it was an amazing place, incredible studio. And, he was so prolific, and he did all these songs, and a few of them felt like they were really good for the Joker. They were very Joker-esque kind of songs. And, but it was sort of a separate thing from, I'm there making the movie, and then, they had this whole idea for concept album or whatever. So I don't, they just kind of, that was my, first movie where, and it was probably kind of the early beginnings for them in terms of marketing and things, like I'd never heard the term franchise before. They never used it, but now that's all you hear, It's like you don't hear movie, you hear franchise. So I think it was interesting to be there at a time when things were starting to change. I kind of feel grateful because it's like, it's more of it was a bit more of a pure time where, you weren't dealing with all that stuff, as you are nowadays. It's a given. There, it was just starting. He's basically got his white skin and he tries to cover himself up with, flesh colored makeup. And it was a challenge, I think, for Nick because, he's got to wipe off this, flesh colored makeup to then reveal his white skin. So, yeah, I think, Nick probably spent a few hours, working on that one. The part was called for a model. So I met her, and she seemed really, good, and I thought she did a really good job. And it was also interesting looking at her face. The idea of then seeing her with a scar was a quite strong, compelling idea. And she was also a good fainter. Fainting in a movie is hard, especially when you're that tall. It's a long way to fall to the ground. And I always admire people when they have those certain kind of skills that seem like they're easy, but they're not. And fainting in a movie is one of them, and she was really excellent at that. Being here in London, luckily I escaped all of the hype and hoopla and negativity. In fact, somebody told me that there was an article in like the Wall Street Journal saying what a mistake it was to cast Michael Keaton and all this, like, oh, we're going to make it like the TV show and blah, 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 blah. And luckily I avoided all of that while being here making the movie. Because I always knew what it was going to be that way. The trailer was a way to kind of show it's not. And I think, stop that talk right now, you people. We spent a lot of time practicing to see what would happen when you make him descend, what would happen to the wings and what would happen to the cape and how he would come down. So, we had to do this live. So it was really, it was part of the reason to make the movie, to give it those looks. And, probably would have liked to make the wingspan bigger, done things that we could, but, we did the best we could given what we had. The Batmobile was very important, obviously, to one of the iconic images of, besides the costume and the setting. I mean, it was probably the next most important item, and it was something that Anton spent a lot of time thinking about, and he really came up, finally with, I think, the really a great design, because it was something that we wanted to be kind of tough and heavy and perverse, but still be kind of, be a Batmobile and see the feeling of that. But also spent a lot of time on the paint job and just the texture and sheen of it, just to make it as kind of tough as possible. Everything was important in it, and again, giving that sort of kind of retro but heavy duty feel to it, so that you feel like it was made, that it was that it's dimensional and there and heavy and again, I remember Anton and I talking about sort of a perversity, because it is a perverse kind of character. I mean, and so we put that weird sort of round thing in the beginning, that sort of jet engine-y thing, which just almost has a kind of a strange, obscene quote. I don't know. There's just something aggressive about it that we liked. We had it built. I think it was John Evans, the effects guy. We literally made, our own car, which was really great, and it had the speed, in fact, we didn't have the set for the car, we didn't have the car could go a lot faster than our set could hold in a way. And it was amazing. I mean, yeah. And it pretty much did all this stuff that it's doing.
How much do you weigh?
Michael was, I think, for a large part of this part of it was Michael. I mean, Michael did mostly whatever he could, because he wanted to. And, but, running in I don't know how many pounds that costume weighed, but it was not, streets are slick, and, we tried to give him as much movement as we could, but it's still what it is. So, there's no greater fear than, playing a character like this. And, at the end of a take, I think Michael's always a little nervous, like, well, how did I look like a complete dork running? I'm wearing a bat suit and I'm trying to look like, this guy, and yeah. So, but Yeah, it was difficult. We did have various people for different shots as Batman doing different things. I mean, in the same way that they had different costumes and different weights of capes, it was kind of a shot by shot basis. I mean, Michael did as much as he could, and because that gave it an extra reality. But in those instances where it was heavy duty stunts, or we'd have either a stunt guy or more of a movement. I mean, people that were better at the martial arts stuff, and then some people better at just the hardcore, and some people better at just I remember just being good at just presenting themselves in a certain way. So it wasn't a large group of people, but it was few for different things. Yeah.
Shield's open. You weigh a little more than 108.
Oh, really?
Let's go.
Stop.
My recollection, even though I guess in the comics, but I always thought of Batman as black. I mean, there's just no question about it. And, it wasn't not even an issue. I mean, that never even, that was it never even brought up. It was, he's black and that's that, and, the insignia, we come up with our own kind of little psychological profiles, which would, just as a little, we try to do what we did with the cars, just kind of tough it up a little bit and just not, make it so little cutie little thing. So we kind of sharpened its edges and just trying to make it a bit more muscular that way. I love when they go into the cave, and I love the score at that point too. It's got a real sort of operatic moment, which I love. And I'm trying to look at him, and because again, it's like this kind of character doesn't want to be analyzed too much. It's like this type of person I felt very close to.
Be careful. They're great survivors.
What is all this?
The police have got it wrong. They're looking for one product. The Joker's tainted hundreds of chemicals at the source.
Then all shipments of products would be poisoned and would all be dead.
No. Poison only works when the components are mixed. Hairspray won't do it alone, but hairspray mixed with lipstick and perfume will be toxic and untraceable.
Did you figure this out?
Roger Pratt helped try to create those sort of lighting schemes where, they accentuated his eyes, which is not easy to do when the guy's moving around, even when he's not. So he spent, was something he did it very well, I thought. We tried really hard because obviously we knew, that's all he's got going for him. And that's really all you want to see in cases so we were always trying to be true to the character.
Why did you bring me here? And you could have sent that stuff to
There are a lot of great artists here, and Anton had a real specific. We had a real specific thing that we wanted to do, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, it really does help to be in this world when you're doing it. I mean, rather than being in some blue room somewhere to be added later. And again, it felt like we were lucky to be kind of the first people to do this kind of, go back to the dark, the more psychological roots of, I don't know, what I always thought comics they had. I mean, that's why as a kid, you're kind of can be a growing tool in a way. Understand your psychology. The way he speaks, Michael, in this, I mean, again, we kept it minimal because he wants it to be minimal. He's not out there to pontificate and make, big speeches, and he doesn't want to be found out. So therefore, he speaks low, speaks without a funny accent, and just keeps it short. And again, just felt that was who he is. Batman, its roots are to me, it's like a vampire or Phantom of the Opera. I mean, and again, that's how he wants himself to be seen. He would probably be happy to be, thought of as an undead creature, or, a vampire. I mean, that's what he's trying to promote. So, and the Joker, the Batman had its roots in horror movie imagery, I think, more than a lot of comics. And again, that's, I think, what drew me to it.
You're right about that.
And if I may say so, quite special. Perhaps you could try telling her the truth.
Coming.
Hi. May I come in? It's a nice apartment. Lots of space. Listen, I came over to clear a few things.
I don't know who you think you are.
The thing I liked about this story, and again, the Joker and Batman are kind of flip sides of each other. One has to remain hidden and dark, and the other gets to be do whatever he wants to do. And they both have dual personalities. They both are screwed up. So that's the best kind of pitting against each other. It's kind of like a classic. If you were to look at a classic prize fight, it's like what you'd kind of hope for, and so that's what made it strong for me as well is the duality of the characters in and of themselves and towards each other. If I were to pick my favorite two, well, I got to deal with it. It was great.
Oh my God, you're married.
No, I'm not married.
You see, my life is really complex.
I like this scene because it's got a lot of different things going on in it that I like, and it's the three of them, and they're all quite good. And it was the first time in a movie for me where there was a sense of interplay that I hadn't really dealt with before, and it was fun to do. And again, it helps when you got the actors like this. There's not a lot of people, not everybody. You come into it as a comic book movie, going okay, and ham it up or do this or that, and both Michael and Kim, always were trying to find, we're treating it like a real movie, which was great. And at the same time, there's humor in this scene, where so they're taking it seriously, but I felt that they found the right balance of taking it serious enough, but then also getting whatever humor was in there. So for me, it was completely the right balance.
The talk. We were having dinner. I was a man doing what
I enjoy this scene. This one I did. I don't know why. Every time, a couple of times I've seen the movie, there's something about it as a piece, as of a whole that I like, and maybe it's just because it's a scene and there's three of them in there. It kind of has a beginning, middle, and end too, which I like to it.
But you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Well, Mrs. Vale, another rooster in the henhouse. Take thy beat out my heart. Bruce Wayne.
I love working with actors that understand, that it's a film, and so it's about the dialogue, but it's really what's between the lines, and all these guys get that. So it's between the lines when I love watching them. It's just their looks and their kind of
Mean kid. Bad seed.
way they're looking at things. From Beetlejuice, that movie I learned, and actually from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I loved actors that were good at improv. I mean, as long as it kind of kept within the spirit and the form of what it is, it's like but like real good improvisational actors know that they find what the character or the root of it is, and then you can almost do anything. I mean, and I do enjoy that. So I promote it when they're good at it. It's like when somebody goes, hey, how about this idea? And it's some crazy thing. But the real good improvisational actors, they know what it is. So they really, it's like Jack can make a stupid noise and it works because he knows what the character is. So yeah, I love doing it. And I've had the, opportunity to work with lots of good, like on Beetlejuice, Michael was excellent at improv. He comes from improv. He didn't improv as much on this, but I think those are the kind of actors I like working with.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
It dawned on me after meeting other actors. I mean, because I didn't start out thinking about him. But just it became really clear after meeting actors. It's like I just couldn't see it, and then all of a sudden it switched, and then I saw Michael's. You see Michael's eyes coming out of the thing, and you go, "Well, this is a guy who needs to dress up like Bat."
My smile is just skin deep. If you could see inside, crying, you might join me for a week.
He did different takes, different ways. That's good. It's not easy to faint. I'm telling you.
You wouldn't believe it. You really wouldn't.
Well, while you were out entertaining, I've been here finding out about your street corner. Vale, I think your friend Wayne is really screwed up.
More good news.
Here.
When Sam was working on a script, it felt like you can't have a Batman movie again to take it away from the series is to give it a psychological foundation. And, even though we don't dwell on it, we wanted to sort of give an idea of why somebody became like this. And, cause otherwise you're kind of going, you're missing a layer of something. So the killing of his parents, was crucial to kind of give a hint of that to see what, to see why he dresses up in a funny costume.
Alfred, did you get the file on my parents?
It's on your table, sir.
Thank you.
Alfred is really, his family, and that's it. And it's kind of like a fantasy, Who wouldn't mind having a father and butler all in the same person? It's like having a mother, father, servant. Sure. It's like a dream come true. When we cast Billy Dee Williams, was in my mind, it was with the idea that eventually, because Harvey Dent ends up being the Two-Face character. And so, I think there was always that, idea. But, for me, I was making the movie, and even though, I'm thinking, well, maybe if there's another movie, because I love the idea of somebody like him, because then you could do like a black, white, there was an interesting element to that character that could be, again, the duality thing, which is so crucial to the Batman material. But, I ended up only making that one other one. And so therefore, it didn't, I'm sure that's probably why he wanted to do the movie in the first place, was the idea of being able to go on and do that. But, I'm glad he did it. Again, having real actors in a comic book movie was a big deal for us, And at the time when you're making a movie, you're not thinking about, you may be thinking about it character wise, like, well, if, cause you create a backstory, whether or not you use it in the film or not, cause you're thinking about all this stuff just to make it more, again, real for yourself and for the characters. So, but what you're not thinking about is doing another movie because you're not even sure you're going to be able to get through this one. having his parents killed by the Joker just made it, again, more personal. And I think anytime in the movie like this, you're just trying to make as many connections that you can make, within its world. It's not real, but still, without going too far, it's a fine balance. But the connective tissue is important. And because it's a kind of fable fantasy, it's like you can, I think, sometimes get away with it because it's like, it's a sort of a melodramatic device, but it's it's a melodramatic film. If I recall correctly, there was a lot of flack for letting Vicky Vale into the Batcave. Although now when I look at it in retrospect and what else they do they seem to become more forgiving in the past few years about these kind of issues. I'm not so sure, but at the time, yeah, I couldn't show my face at conventions in fact, I haven't been able to go to a convention since. We didn't shoot that scene where he beats the crap out of Alfred. To me at the time, I mean, I didn't see the problem with it. And I was actually a bit surprised. I mean, but I don't know. It didn't, I felt we were keeping sort of pure to it. But there definitely, I recall, there were some near death threats and things like that, I recall. It's like if you take an old myth or fable, everybody will see it differently. And that's the great thing about these myths and stories. It's like they can be told in different ways and by different people and have a different take on it. Peter McDonald's was a great, action director. I learned a lot because I, not really did a lot of that kind of stuff before. So he had dealt with that kind of stuff before. So, it was, just trying to get as much out of it as we could. I think probably Peter would probably, the biggest problem is that we run out of set and we couldn't get the car going as fast as, it could go. So I think that was almost the biggest problem with the thing. I don't know how many Batmobiles we had. I might be wrong about this. Somehow in my mind there's like 3 to 6, 3 to, because sometimes we had a shell. They were different. It depends on what you consider. We had like a few working ones, and then ones that was more just the shell and tow rigs, and so they were different. I don't recall exactly how many we had. we basically used the Prince songs as a kind of the voice of the Joker in a certain way, a certain kind of party atmosphere, Mr. Party Animal.
Just keep you young. Just makes you really never trust. This question to you, compels you to be with me.
Parade, it was our biggest crowd sequence, and it was as much as we could afford. I think nowadays we probably would have tried to have add some more in there, but whatever. It's melodramatic. It is what it is. As many as we could get in there. It wasn't the most pleasant conditions out there, 3 a.m, in England, where you literally for months didn't see the day at all. I mean, several months I didn't see daylight. And, but again, you look at Jack and his enthusiasm, it did kind of help everybody, myself included, get through the things. 'Cause, that kind of enthusiasm, energy rubs off on everybody. And, long nights, it certainly helped. It was in the winter at night. But like I said, we shot 6 days a week, which I, would not recommend for, a whole shoot. And that was difficult. So, we started, well, it must have been in the fall, and then, it was out that next. So it was one of those big movies with a short schedule. I think this was about all we could take, the plane and the car, because we wanted that moment where he goes up and, does the image on the moon. It just seemed like a great moment to do. And worked with Derek Meddings, who had been a fan of, he did all the original Thunderbird stuff and all. So it's like, kind of using that kind of technology. I mean, because that was technology at the time, but, it was great to work with somebody like him, whose work you'd admired before. It just was a great moment for us too. It was fun to do. We had a tight schedule on this, and the technology back in the late 80s is obviously different than now, and so I don't like to rely on it too much anyway. So that's why, again, sets, models, to build as much of it as we could and rely as least amount on matte paintings and things, although we had to, obviously. But, the kind of lower grade technology seemed to work with the design and with the concept and with what the movie was. Gotham City is an important character in it. So, there were a fair amount of model work. Because I do prefer having models to matte paintings. They just, especially when it comes to buildings, you can't, there's no contest in terms of just the feeling of being dimensional. The ending of the film, if I recall correctly, we were involved in the kind of things I was talking about earlier, were script changes and because of time and money and all the things. And, you know, we were seemingly like constantly working on it as we were going along for some reason. And the ending was a case in point where the bones of it were there. But I remember like Jack being down at the bottom of the stairs and going, why am I walking up the stairs? And I had no answer for it. I said something like, well, I don't know. I'll let you know when you get up there. We're still like working on it, you know? So it was like one of those kind of situations. But, I mean, some of that doesn't bother me because it kind of keeps things alive and fresh. I mean, people might think, oh, well, it can be a recipe for disaster, but there is an aspect of it which can help, isn't necessarily bad. And that's being able to then kind of be a bit more spontaneous. And, you know, it does kind of help things sometimes as opposed to being just completely negative. I think Sam and I, from the very beginning, I mean, that was thing number one, no Robin. I mean, just because we're trying to do a new Batman movie, he just does not fit. And I even think like Bob Kane, he was happy that there was no Robin in it because again, it doesn't feed a guy who wants to be hidden and alone and hide and not be found out. I mean, you know, and it's hard to come up with a psychological profile for a guy wearing a little red outfit with green booties, you know, I mean, and all the jokes, you know, that come with it and that, you know, as a kid, they're just a part of the Batman mythology. It's the Batman and Robin jokes, you know, so just thought just avoid that and keep it pure to its original form that way. By having no Robin and just having the Joker versus Batman, it kind of kept it that sort of mano-a-mano kind of thing and just one against the other, which I think helped the sort of operatic feel of what we were trying to go for. That was sort of also meant to kind of work on a couple of levels. One was he looks up and sees how tall it is, and it's going to take him a few extra minutes to get up there. So there was a couple of different levels of that one. We enjoyed making the interior of that church because we didn't have a lot of money or time, and the art department didn't have a lot of time. So we just they did it really simple, and it actually was one of the more fun sets to shoot. And I think Roger, because it, you know, did a certain kind of light. It had to do with the lighting, and had to do with, and there was just something really like pure and simple about it that was it kind of surprised all of us. You know how much we kind of enjoyed doing it, and like, oh, we should do everything like this. A few birds, you know, no walls, a couple of columns, some pews. We decided to shoot in England, I think, from the very beginning. The dollar, I don't think, was in the greatest shape. It was okay. There was the space. I think a lot of it had to do with that. I mean, there was not a lot going on in London at the time, filmmaking wise. So Pinewood, I remember we came here, it was like empty, and it had the space and it had the resources, and that was the reason. And I was so glad too, because also it had the artists and the support and everything to do it. It was good to be away from the hoopla, and you know, and I really loved it. I loved working with the people here. The studio was very supportive, but you know, when you're making a movie, you just want to get on with it, and there was enough problems. So being away for me helped. It just, because also when you're away, you're also somehow more focused on the movie in a certain way. When you're, you know, in LA, where it's the film industry, you know, somehow it's a different vibe. And, you know, here, just the weather and everything, it helped kind of get you into the whole feel and mood of it for me. The craftsmen here are excellent, and therefore you get, you know, because I enjoy that aspect of it. So when you see somebody doing a beautiful model or a great painting, I mean, it gets you excited. It's like, again, working with a great actor. You get an energy from their contribution that keeps you going. You know, it helps you get through the day on a positive level, where I go like, oh, that's beautiful, you know, and it's amazing. And you know, you go, oh yeah, it is an art form. It's not just a business, you know, and that's what keeps you going. Having it take place in a belfry also just gives it that horror movie kind of, you know, bats in your belfry, you know, inside your mind. So it seemed like it was a good final place for them to have a confrontation, you know, because it's got that kind of phantom or hunchback Notre Dame, you know, it's got all that kind of imagery that works with this. The inspirations I could look to on this visually or anything would be probably, you know, the old monster movies, in Expressionist, you know, Fritz Lang, you know, where all the shadows play an important part in it. Uh, Even, you know, like some of the Val Lewton films, things were mystery and where shadows are very important, and then, you know, like things like, except for certain characters and all, you know, the man who laughs, you know, for the Joker, um, um, you know, vampire movies, Frankenstein, you know, those just kind of stay with you. Those kind of are sort of indirect inspirations, no matter kind of what film you're making. So I didn't really study or look at any films to kind of, uh, you know, for inspiration for it. Success was a surprise. It's always a surprise, as is failure. I mean, I'm always equally surprised by a success or a failure, because it's like, wow, I liked it, you know, or I enjoyed doing it. So it's like, so I never really go into it knowing what it, you know, what it's going to be with too many preconceptions. I find that almost every movie I've done, there's also a retrospect feel to it's like, because, you know, people like often think I get good reviews and this or that, and it's not there. It's somewhat inaccurate. I mean, most of the movies I've done have gotten at best mixed reviews, which is different than box office things. But I don't know. I always felt that this one had potential, just because I don't know why. I mean, you know, part of my reason for doing it was that I felt like a fan too. So, I mean, I felt like kind of like, well, there were other people out there like me that would get into something like this. So I wasn't like overly concerned about like, oh my God, is this big expensive movie going to make its money back? I always felt semi or not worried about that for some reason. I didn't feel the pressure of, I think, I was, so it was my third film. And so I was still sort of, I guess you could say, the first big film I ever did. Uh, so I was a bit naive, which I think worked in my favor. You know, I didn't know to be afraid. You know, I didn't know. And being here, I wasn't aware of all of, you know, if any angst that they might have had about me, or worries that they might have had about me. And I also just had enough trouble. Like I said, I was like ill every day and working 6 days a week and just trying to get the thing done. That was more of my problem. So if I had a near breakdown, it had probably more to do with that than it did with feeling pressure from an outside source. I avoid all of that kind of talk and just hide in my back cave and, you know, don't try not to pay too much attention to it, because it's nothing I can do about. You know, you try not to pay attention to things that you can't do anything about, because otherwise you're just worried about things, and there are other things to worry about. So I tried not to go there. I like a lot of the quieter moments. I just feel like there was something that I hadn't done before. It was interesting. I like some of the moments with Jack where he's just doing, well, how come a man, can dress up like a bat, like just some of the characters' private moments like that. I enjoy. I don't know. It's just they're not seeing it in a long time. It's just it brings back the people that you worked with and all it was just and the artists that you worked with and the actors and so I do have a overall good feeling about it. There's a few moments I think in the film where the technology is a little shaky. That's one of them. And for me, I think it's okay in this film. It's because it's a certain low techness to the film that, as I said earlier, I felt was appropriate for this material. And so, I don't know, now you have to do a little bit more. The weird thing is with Joker, I mean, and not that he's like, Freddy Krueger or Jason, from Friday the 13th, there's always a way, especially with a character like the Joker, that it was just some big joke, so you want, like, in the same way as the buildup of the character, you want it to die, you don't want to have that kind of, oh, here we go, there's going to be a sequel kind of a thing. Because, in that sort of operatic sense, it felt like you wanted to finish it off with him being dead as opposed to, oh, where did he go? That kind of a thing.
He gave us a signal.
We wanted to end it again sort of on that sort of operatic, and, it was good to throw in the bat signal there, kind of another image that's from the material, and then kind of make it again sort of melancholy, sort of bittersweet, but grand, which we felt was very much like the material. So, it's got a mix of both sort of dreaminess, grandeur, sadness, loneliness, bigness, all in one.
I thought champagne would be in order, ma'am.
Hiya.
I feel about Batman, again, after time has passed, quite proud of it. I feel, it was, I do feel like it was fresh at the time, which made it great for me. It felt like new territory in terms of comic book material and taking that other approach. and and it being the first kind of big movie, you don't know what to be afraid of. So, those kind of things that are new experiences for you are the freshest, and are therefore probably the more memorable that way, because you feel like you're doing something for the first time, and then if you're lucky enough to have it be successful, then it's even more surreal and amazing. The whole thing is surreal. Like, that's why it's hard to, it's not really real. I mean, it's real, but you don't really feel that connected to it. I mean, I would just try to go do as best a job and hope the best. I mean, it's like, if it makes enough money to make its money back and do well, then then that's about all as I think about it, really. I mean, because, films are even low budget movies are a lot of money. So I only take it as far as hoping that it does okay for itself. So get to make another movie. Well, if you've made it through this commentary, I congratulate you. And thank you for listening.